Welcome to today's lesson on how to create a good word problem. The whole point of this lesson is to inspire you, the student, to be able to create your own word problem after we finish this quick tutorial. I generated 4 steps that I think are important in making a good word problem. And the first step is this: choose a topic that interests you. Think about something. Do you like video games? Do you like to shop? Are you interested in business? Think about if you really like food. Think about different events at school, such as a dance or the cafeteria or something like that. The one thing I haven't mentioned is probably my favorite topic, and that's sports. And so I generally love to create word problems that involve sports. Usually, if I'm interested in a topic and convey that to my students will become interested as well. There's the first thing. The second thing is to figure out how to make the students think when they are solving the problem. We don't want to just spoon feed the students and make it so black and white that they don't have to think at all when they solve it. So I challenge you as the creator of the word problem to word the problem in a way that makes the students think, not necessarily to trick them, but to make them have to pull multiple concepts together. The third thing is when you actually create the word problem is you need to provide all the necessary and relevant information. You don't want to leave something out that would be create a situation where the students don't know how to solve the problem or are missing information so they can't solve it. And the last thing is simply make sure that the problem makes sense and check to make sure that it works. Obviously, you are looking for a specific answer or a specific outcome, so make sure you do your part as the teacher in checking out the answer. So let's go ahead and start. Let's create a word problem from scratch. And like I said, my favorite topic is sports, and so I want to go ahead and find something that works. And I'm going to go to ESPN.com because I love sports, and most of you are aware that the NBA Finals just happened, so I'm going to go ahead and click on NBA. I don't know if you watched the Spurs or Miami Heat Game 7. It was an exciting game. I'm going to click on box score because that's generally where a lot of the sports statistics are made available. Now, let's pause for a moment. We are creating word problems for percent proportions or percent equations. So that being said, we need to be thinking about percents here. There's so many different types of questions I could ask. You look at the score. Okay, I could use something with those numbers. I could do something with the team's records. I could look at how many points they scored a quarter. I could continue to go down here and look at different player statistics. You know, Tim Duncan makes 8 out of 18 free throws. What percentage of free throws did he make? There's a myriad of different possibilities that you could use. I'm actually going to go up here and kind of focus in on the team's record, okay? So this shows 58-24 is the team's overall record. That shows their away record, and over here you see 66-16 overall, 37-4 at home. This shows home because they actually played that game at home, and this shows how many or what they did because they were the away team during that particular game. Now, as I think about this word problem, there's a couple different things I could do. The team won 66 games. They lost 16 games. Okay, so a couple things I could do. I could add those two together, 66 plus 16, and that gives me 82. So if I was writing a word problem, okay, I could simply say this. Okay, you know, let me move this down here. Okay. The Miami Heat played 82 games last season. If they won 66 games, how many? I was about to write how many games did they lose, but that wouldn't have nothing to do with proportions. I would say what percentage of the games did they win? What percentage of games did they win? Okay, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty basic word problem. They played 82 games. They won 66. 66 is part of 82. I'm asking what percentage did they win? I could also flip it around and say, well, what percentage did they lose? Okay, so I could say, okay, Miami Heat played 82 games last season. Having trouble typing. if they lost, okay, they lost 16 games. They lost 16 games. What percentage of the games did they lose? Both those are pretty easy. Can you think of a way that I could change it up to make it a little bit more difficult? Because as you recall, I said I want to make the students think. Well, one way you could do that is by saying, well, if they won 66 games, what percentage did they lose? So I'm going to copy and paste this and put it down here. So if I change this, okay, to be what percentage did they lose, the person's going to have to find what percent they won and then do a little subtraction. Okay, if you go back to the main page, what else do you notice? I could ask them to figure out the team's record. Well, how could I word that? The Miami Heat played 82 games last season. They won 66 games. What percentage of the games did they lose? Okay. I could do something like this. The Miami Heat played 82 games last season. If they won, and then I could figure out the percentage. So let's figure out 66 out of 82. Okay. Calculator. 66 out of 82 is 80%. Okay. If we round. The Miami Heat played 82 games last season. If they won 80% of their games, what was their overall record? So you see, the first two are pretty easy. The second two become a little bit harder. What I want to tell you, if I break down this last question, one very important thing to do would be to put a disclaimer that they won about 80% of the games, or I may need to say round to the nearest whole number. Because if I actually solve the problem, okay, so let's look at this, and I said, okay, they won 80% out of 100 games, which is what percent out of 82? We'll solve the proportion. 100x equals, let's see, 82 times 80. 82 times 80 divided by 100. Okay, 65.6. So if a student responds and they get 65.6, they're going to say, well, hey, Mr. A, they can't win a 6/10 of a game. What do I do? That's why you need to actually solve the problem, like I mentioned in my steps before, where it says make sure the problem makes sense and make sure it works, so that the student will then know that they can round to 66 games. Now, that would not be the final answer for this problem, because the student would then have to say, well, 82 minus 66 is 16. 66 and 16 is the team's record. Can you think of any other problems like this, or any other issues with this problem? The first thing I think about is when you think of wins and losses, you also must need to think about ties. So you might need to say something like this. You cannot, or the Miami Heat did not tie any of their games last season. So again, there's just a sampling of the different ways you could write a word problem. Pick something that's interesting to you, make the students think, provide all the relevant information, and make sure the problem makes sense, and make sure that it actually works. Thanks so much for listening.